And welcome, Rugby Rant fans. It's the big guy, Scott Ferrara. That's Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. It's episode 64 of the Rugby Rant. We are live. It's draft day, baby. Woo! Very excited. The big guy's super excited. If you don't know, you guys can call me, Mel Kiper Jr. or Adam Shea Jr. with all the information we're going with. But hey, Hammer, it's draft day. It's a day we've been waiting for a little while. What's up?
Not much. Yeah, we've been waiting on it. We've been very excited. I've been digging through some draft data, trying to look at a lot of highlight films from some college guys out there. I mean, anybody who follows college rugby knows that it's been a pretty tough season for college rugby. I mean, of course, they fit in the sevens down there in NOLA with the NS. Is it the NCS? Is it the
NSCRO?
And NSCRO. Well, it's now NCR, right? National College Rugby.
Right.
And there wasn't a 15s national championship. Only some of the teams got in, some, especially in the Midwest and in the Deep South, got in some rugby and 15s rugby, that is. And so it's been pretty tough for some of these guys to get a look, particularly those guys out in California. There were guys, Cal guys, St. Mary's guys, Central Washington came into the Midwest and played Lindenwood. So it's been a little spotty, hit or miss. Hopefully we'll fill in those gaps and familiarize all the fans out there with some of the draftees that are out there and what they might add to an MLR roster.
Absolutely. Shout out to our buddy Lerone White giving us some love there in the comments. So before we get
he's a freaking Austin Rhino, man. Love me some Romy.
Love Lerone. Before we get into it real quick, let's talk about Rugby Coffee. Listen, we have to pay the bills here, and Rugby Coffee is in my opinion is one of the best coffees around. Not only are they a sponsor of ours, I think we talked about it on the last couple episodes. I went and I bought some because that's how much I believe not only in their coffee because it's delicious, but their message. 10% of their profits go to youth rugby in Canada and the United States. They are living what we try and strive to do here at the Rugby Rant by growing one fan at a time, and they're doing it through youth rugby, and it's an amazing thing. So please check out rugbycoffee.com and check out the crowd favorite, their North American blend. And I know Rob is a Jouet which is a French roast, a darker, a heavier taste. I mean, he talks about Jouet all the time. Me and him kind of fight between the two. And actually now they're partnered with the Toronto Arrows. Get your crowd favorite Toronto Arrows branded coffee right now. I know they have a limited quantity because I'm sure Doug Wilkie and Karen Gasparino bought a lot of it. So make sure you get some of that. Anyway, before we talk about the draft itself, let's talk a little bit about the Rugby Showcase. The big guy got to go to the Rugby Showcase in Connecticut this year in Westport, and it was put on by HPMG Group, High Performance Management Group, and our buddy Mikey Brown was running the entire thing. We're going to have Mikey Brown on in a couple minutes, but real quick, let's just take a look at what the Rugby Showcase showed us.
This is a great opportunity, gentlemen. Life is all about a couple opportunities you get in your life. Good luck to everybody.
Working today, boys! Talk to me! Give me! Yup! Yeah. Good job, man!
What's up, brother? Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Hey, Rob. Great to be here.
Mikey Brown, what's up, brother?
And excited. It's draft day. I'm really excited for all these guys.
Absolutely. I'm super excited too, man. It's one of those things where I get that feeling on draft day like I get at the NFL draft, and I can't wait. And it's one of those things that I think international fans might not understand, but because it's uniquely American at this point, but it's an event. It's something we love to talk about. It's something we love to break down months after it happens. But one of the big things that happened before that happened before the draft is the Rugby Showcase. For those of you that don't know, it was a combine put on in conjunction with HPMG Group. Mikey Brown was running the entire thing. Although some of his choices on personnel were questionable because Chris Mattina is probably the worst referee I've ever seen. Anthony Parry just kind of ran around a little bit, but other than that, everybody else was strictly professional, including Fodes. You can go check out the piece on TRN. But Mike, break down a little bit about what the showcase was this year.
Yeah, so we had about 70 athletes. Over 2/3 were draft declared. And are in this draft, and it was pretty much a day to showcase their talents. A lot of these guys don't have good film, especially during a COVID year per se. and they actually have real life scouts an opportunity to actually showcase their talent. So in the beginning part of the morning, we did all the physical testing, 4 drills. And then we did also the second half of the morning, we did positional skills. So we got into the line out scrums and the backs of their kicking and the nines of their passing. And we did that for the morning. And then the afternoon, we actually had a 10v10 scrimmages rolling. So at least all guys got, 3 matches, 30 minutes of actual, ball and play in front of, right on the 50-yard line. 6 teams were out there. So it was really exciting times and incredible feedback. Really excited about the future of this event.
So, Mikey, let me just talk a little bit about that. We're going to be, for those fans at home that are watching, paying attention, and they're going to be getting ready for the draft, and they're kind of paying attention to us. We're bringing on a super special guest in addition to Mikey Brown. I mean, he's a super special guest. And then we've got super special guest number 2 coming on, J.D. Stephenson. And, it'll be interesting to talk to him because he has a pretty good handle on a lot of these college players. But you hit the nail on the head, right? A lot of these guys don't have great film. It gives them an opportunity to display their wares live and in person to general managers and coaches. I'm interested in finding out what aspects of the day did you find coaches and GMs as you debrief with them that they got a lot of value in?
I think once we, split it up into the positional skills, actually see them scrum, see the hookers throw, see the nines kick. I think that's provided a lot of value to them, especially because you're going against someone else they could be potentially drafting too. I know, a lot of that stuff is cohesion, and that's why we sort of, limited that stuff in the scrimmages to keep, make sure the ball was in play. And they found that very useful as well, especially in 10s. They thought that actually showed a lot of the guys' fitness going into it. And so I think, the positional skills showed a lot of value into it. And, there was a huge amount of great feedback from the teams actually. And the teams that, didn't show up for whatever reason have already hit me up, a lot of them, about, let me show up to next year. This is a great event. So I think, it provides huge value for these guys. A lot of these teams, let's say, your beloved New Orleans, Ryan Fitzgerald, he's a scout at heart. He loves it. But, he would personally, fly in these guys, by themselves and show it. For these teams, it sort of, saves them a lot of time for especially the initial interview to actually see them in person and sort of evaluate them going forward.
And not to give out any of the Fitzy secrets, but in speaking to him at the showcase, he went the night before and did his interviews. He found out where players were staying and interviewed them. And I think that's a little more comfortable for some of these guys to have like a private chat with some of these guys, because it's kind of tough. You want to chat in front of the group, and then who's trying to get in on you. It's almost like a bachelor bachelorette situation sometimes at these things. But I got to be honest, I think Mike's right. The last half of the day when they were running these 10-on-10 scrimmages, it was friggin' hot. The big guy was dying. The sun was out from 8 a.m. Till he left at 4. It was probably 98 degrees the entire time, not a cloud in sight. And that's where you're going to see these guys' fitness and kind of test their mettle a little bit about who's chasing, guys who chasing down a play, who's kind of quitting on stuff. And you're getting, I think, a little bit more than just the metrics. But to talk about the metrics too, the jump, the vertical leap, and the 40-meter dash, laser, using the lasers to get the numbers. And, that's something that every professional league uses, and something that I feel like this was a big win for the MLR and this rugby showcase. And, it shows that we can compete with the big boys on this level to give access to players to this stuff. So Mike, can you give us a couple names you thought really excelled at the showcase?
Yeah, all the Lindenwood boys that were, are going to be top, I think top picks are going to, they really performed. Tinashe, Connor Burns, actually George O'Sullivan played really, Kale, Jonah. I think those guys, are going to be selected pretty high. Also just a little backboard. I think it was very valuable for the players and the teams, like you said, afterwards. They actually got to talk. Players, don't really have the access to actually talk to these guys. They were all, Scott, you were there, very accessible, willing to talk, wanting to talk to these guys. So the players had huge value in that. Another great player, I think, is Sam Kowalski from Notre Dame College. He put up the bench press. I think he's going to, be top. Caleb Stroom, I think he's a great, he didn't have any actual real film per se with the University of Alabama. I expect him to actually go high this year. He played really well in the club sevens too last weekend as well for Nova. And then also off there. Decor Davis, no one really knew about him out of Queen University. So there's a lot of dimes in the rough. And I'm really excited about all these. I'm emotionally invested because I try to, I was the one talking to the players. Hey, this is a great event, and I want as many players, to be drafted as possible from the showcase.
So, Mike, I want to touch upon two things. One, Mike, I want to know, did the showcase feature the highlight event of the evening, which was a 100-meter sprint between the big guy and Fodes? Because that was supposed to happen. That's what fans were promised. And I'm not sure that they got what their money was supposed to buy.
I'll answer that one. It didn't fucking happen at all. I showed up in flip-flops for a reason. But I believe Fodes at age 36, I think, ran a 4.8 40-meter, which is pretty quick for a dude who just showed up and ran it in like jeans. He didn't really have like equipment. I mean, he was wearing a showcase, top, but like I'm pretty sure he was wearing skinny jeans and ran a 4.8. So that's pretty good.
It's like the Rich Eisen, right? It's the Rich Eisen of just running the combine. So that's all, it's part of the show as well. That's why we got to make it as a show as well.
And Mikey, we're going to see the big guy in skinny jeans next year, from what I understand. So the other real point that I want to make and draw into here is I want to touch upon what the big guy just mentioned regarding NOLA, and we'll get some more insight from this when we bring JD in here in a bit. He is on standby, ready to go, chomping at the bit to join us. But he's down there with NOLA. We'll fill fans in on his role. But everybody's got to remember where Fitz comes from, the GM from NOLA. And for those of you guys who don't know, it's pretty close to the bone for me. He comes from the NFL side of things, so I think he takes a little different approach, maybe perhaps, I don't want to say more professional approach, but a more polished approach, shall we say, it's with such a young league as to how he conducts his business insofar as the draft. And Scott mentioned it. He went in the night before, got an opportunity to have private interviews. I think there's a lot of value in that for coaches and GMs because you get a little bit of an insight as to the mind of that player, what they think about, what drives them, what motivates them, how they might fit in with the team. And for teams that really buy into chemistry like NOLA does, I think it's important for a GM to get an idea of how a player might fit when they come down and join the team, either for some preseason training or, when the team meets full on. Mikey, can you elaborate? Is there a plan, not only to do more with that piece perhaps next year, but might we see this rugby showcase take it to another level?
Yeah, of course we want to take it to another level. There's a lot, just based on model. Do we do a multi-day event? Do we have testing a one day and then, games and, positional skills another day? So that was a feedback from the players. Maybe, it was too much time on their feet. But that's something we could go forward. Is it a multi-site location or is it one site location? That's something also that we're trying to, move forward to this. It had huge success. The Rugby Pass put it up on their YouTube page that has over 22,000 views of our event on there. So that, it's very well watched and there's a lot of interest of these, American talent. And we really can, change the way, rugby is sort of, going forward. But I think especially in the second and third rounds, you'll see, like what sort of what Rob said, getting to know the player. I think the teams that showed up, I think it'll be a strong correlation in their second, third round picks of people, showcase attendees and actual, teams who showed up because they actually know the player. And because of the lack of quality of film, it's really tough to separate, guy, the 10th ranked guy from the, 40th ranked guy in this draft right now. So actually knowing the player. And then also, I think you'll see a lot of these guys who don't get selected, especially from the showcase, get into the 404s, get into, NOLA's Academy, Rooney's Academy, Free Jack. I think the guys that, were there, Austin's Academy, I think you'll see a lot of correlation in there with the club game, bringing those guys in because I had those conversations like, all right, we know this guy. He's a good player. He's a good young kid. He has a, great attitude. We know him. We know we can invest in him. I think you'll see a lot of correlation. I think, once I think with this round, you'll see a couple, or with this draft, you'll see a couple guys like the Calebs and the Decor Davises that you don't know about. I think players will realize, hey, this is my shot. I can actually, teams will actually pick me there, and teams will come back, and all the teams will say, hey, there's actually talent here. Right here in one location, this is a huge value for us. So I'm really excited about the draft.
Absolutely. We're excited too. Mike, first of all, thank you so much for letting me come and be a part of the showcase. Hopefully I'll be back next year. It was a great experience. I mean, to see it. It was professional. It's what was needed. It's something that helped out the MLR in a time where the MLR couldn't do it because of the championship and the draft. So it was good to see. Thank you so much again for coming on our show, Mike. We appreciate it.
And Mike, if you bring the show to the Midwest, you know who the man to call is, my friend.
I do. The hammer.
You bet.
Before we get to JD, we have a little video from some of the draftees last year. So check out some of the draftees that we've interviewed before about their experience with the draft.
Yeah, so one thing that comes to mind that I would change from last year's draft would be actually prior to the draft, and that's the film that I gave out to the scouts or gave to the GMs prior to it. I spent a lot of time on it, and I'm happy with what I put out, and I worked on it myself. But I think if I were to do it over again, I would kind of pay somebody to do it to make it as presentable as possible, because that at the end of the day, that's what in America for rugby, that's how you're presenting yourself, right? Because it's not a nationally broadcasted sport. You're not on ESPN every Saturday. So it's something that, besides seeing you in person, this is the best way to judge a player. And in those highlights, it's not all about the big plays. It's not always about the big runs or it's not every play is a big run, right? It's all about the dirty work, because when you take a step up, you're not going to be making those line breaks as much. It's going to be about if you're hitting rucks properly, if you're making tackles properly. It's all about the small things, and that's what scouts are looking for, and that's what people have to put in. And if you can pass, stuff like that. So.
And that was friend of the show, Andrew Guerra, Rookie of the Year for the 2021 season. Rob, let's introduce our next guest here, baby.
100%. So, I want to touch upon and bring a segue from what Rookie of the Year Andrew Guerra was talking about into introducing our next guest. Andrew talked a lot about game film, and he talked about the things that you should showcase in your game film when you send it out to scouts, to GMs, to coaches. And there's a guy right here, Mr. JD Stephenson. He is the executive vice president of player operations for the NOLA Gold. There is a coach in the United States that knows one hell of a lot about game film, breaking down tape, giving access to players, helping them improve their play through video and data analysis. It's Mr. JD Stephenson. JD, we thank you so much for joining us on this very special day for the league. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Hammer. Thanks, big guy. Appreciate it. It's good to be here, fellas.
Well, we know you're a busy man because I've seen you break down film. You must stay up till like 4 a.m. drinking Pepsi One, or is it Coke One? Which one is it? I forgot.
Coke Zero. No, it's Coke Zero.
So.
Hold on.
Thanks for the plug, Hammer.
You drink Coke Zero, but Fitzy drinks Mountain Dew. How does that even correlate?
It doesn't. It doesn't. So, and to be fair, I'll give a plug to Fitz. He's fortunate enough. He's got a great relationship with the boys that on a Monday morning you'll find a bag just sitting out the front of his door, and it's full with Mountain Dew and other. But he will tell you though too, he did have to take about a month off. There was a bit of abuse that happened towards Mountain Dew, so he's he's taking a bit of a hiatus. But I think for the draft piece though, he must have shares in PepsiCo or something, because
Yeah, I talked to him last week, and my man, well, he came on, and for fans at home, we'll see some snippets from my conversation with him a little bit later. But I couldn't decide if I didn't know better, I would have thought he was on a 3-day bender, but he wasn't. He was preparing for the draft. My man was still unshaven. His eyes were sagging. I mean, he looked like he was at the end of his Mountain Dew crash, and he was like, "Hammer, just get me through this interview and let me go home."
I can't. I mean, because we talked about before, Fitzy comes from the NFL, and this process in the NFL is a huge deal. Again, for our international folks, this is how in other sports kids from the collegiate side are identified. And if you go back to baseball and hockey in college sports, players are drafted as freshmen they then continue and they play to their junior or senior year, and then are expected to sign a contract with the team, which I find amazing. We aren't doing that. We're doing the NFL style, where you're either have completed your junior year or have at least 3 years in college, which I think makes a little more sense. Rugby's a physical game. It's a game of attrition, and let's be honest, I don't think an incoming freshman's going to really tackle a guy who just played 5 years in the Premiership, right? So I could see the correlation more between the NFL draft and the MLR draft. But so JD, as in your area for and not to go into details about NOLA Gold's picks and all that right now, we're going to wait for the coverage to start and talk about that later. But just in general, like in this season with COVID and things like New York in the Northeast not even being able to play rugby, a lot of schools not being able to support testing and things like that, to have a season. Did you find it like a smaller, harder player pool to pick from this year?
Yeah, I think you got to rely on a lot of your early reports, and I think the other piece is that, and you guys know this all too well, is the rugby community in America is quite small. So a phone call to some people actually carries a lot of weight, and really putting players on the radar for us to be considering. I will say though, from a footage standpoint, and for any prospective players, and Guerra nailed it, is that look, the only way for us to really be able to identify and then more importantly do the development piece is through quality footage. So any time that you're able to actually put your best foot forward, I mean, if mum and dad are at your game, can mum or dad film the match for you and take a little bit of time to have it elevated and there's just some simple kind of cheap hacks you can do, but it really does mean the world because look, at the end of the day, once that match is finished and we get a nice match report and say, Billy's played an awesome game, well, it get washed away by the next weekend. So, the footage, as we say, doesn't lie. And obviously some of the analysis in which we, the detail in which we've used it at the national team level and we apply it to MLR, it really unearths some players that to be fair fly under the radar and or kind of conversely they can be weighted in a way that might be beneficial for NOLA but necessarily don't fit the way that Marty wants to play at Rooney.
Yeah, I want to touch upon a couple of things that we brought in that we danced around for a moment. It all centers around Guerra's comments, and you alluded to those, JD. He talks about the criticalness of bringing in quality game footage. And here's what I noticed, and you tell me if I missed something, if I got something wrong, JD, because you have a far stronger eye for this than I do. What I noticed is that a lot of guys focus on their running ability with ball in hand, right? But what I noticed they lacked is a lot of the other things that Guerra referred to, some of the dirty work, right? I thought some of the better game film that I saw for me was players that would illustrate, okay, here's 30 seconds of a few quality runs. Here's 30 seconds of some of my best tackles, right? Here's 30 seconds of some of my really quality passing from my vision to spring other guys loose to score or to put people in space. For your skill players like fly halves and fullbacks, perhaps even some centers, some 12s, here's some kicks that I made with ball in hand. And then even for your loose forwards, your jackling ability, right? And so I think for me, if I was going to suggest to a player, put together obviously some runs, put together some passing, put together, some defensive ability, and then look to positional specific play to the position you want to emphasize, right? Whether it's in lineouts for locks, props, you're going for your scrummaging techniques, hooks, throwing in the ball. What were your thoughts on some of the film that you watched as some of these draftees submitted it?
Yeah, you nailed it, Hammer. I mean, it's twofold, right? Like it's the core, the modern game, and it is a modern game, right? That we're asking props, we're asking, 1 through 15 now to have a core skill set that can run, pass, and for the most, even back rowers now kick. So because of that, we need to see that you have the capacity and that core skill set. So, and look, it doesn't need to be, hey, here's me in a backyard passing, left and right or things like that, right? The reality is though, that you're able to position it in a way that person, again, I use the NOLA and the Rooney piece. If Marty wants to play a high tempo, high ball and play, there's going to be, running, passing. So he's going to look for a multi-skilled, say, type 5 player. Whereas a team that's heavily reliant upon a set piece, well, look, we're just going to prioritize their scrummaging ability and what have you. So you do want to cater to both situations there. What I will say, though, is that, look, people that ball carry, after about 3 or 4 carries, we can actually work out if you've seen the space, what are your feet, what's your body profile like at the point of contact. 3 or 4 things, for most things, we can tick the box, guys. So, I think that, the actual quality of the footage. The other piece is don't overplay your hand in positions, because the reality is we're going to ask for a follow-up of full match film. You ask, what are the other things, the intangible pieces? Second effort. You look, they say you touch the ball for 8% of the game. The other 92% is what you do off the ball. So what's your second effort? How do you position yourself? What are your comms like? Those type of intangible pieces that really do lead to successful players.
Yeah, and you talk about in the intangibles. Here's an intangible that maybe a lot of newer fans don't understand, but people like me and Rob, being kind of insiders, understand visa issues. We're going to have players in this draft that will hit the foreign designation as a player if they're drafted. So can you elaborate on maybe some of the visa issues? Again, not going into detail, but just overall things, and maybe when you're looking at guys who might not be USA eligible at this point, what's the upside and downside of drafting them?
Yeah, so it's a real interesting one, right? Like, so Regulation 8 per World Rugby is what governs essentially nationality or the naturalization process of players. So when we're looking, an international player, let's use a player that's playing, I won't name names, but playing collegiate rugby, if they don't fit the third designation, which is through residency to be classified as a US player, essentially they're treated the same as an international player. So at some stage, you're going to need to get a visa. You're going to use an international cap on there. So I do think, and you'll potentially see it tonight with players that might be highly rated on people's boards. If everything was if everything was the same and you're able to draft whoever you wanted, it does really factor into a GM's decision making. Just on the regulation piece. So in my kind of previous life, obviously the last 7 years working with USA Rugby, this was something I worked with the league, was actually the designation of domestic and international. So there's 3 ways you can be US qualified, which is, you're born in the US yourself, you have a parent or grandparent that's born in the US, and then lastly is through residency. So residency used to be 36 months consistently prior to being designated as an international player, so 3 years. In that 3 years, you're able to take about 2 months off, be out of the country for various reasons. But the big thing here is that, are you working towards establishing a residency? So do you have are you paying rent? Do you pay your taxes? Do you have a revenue stream? So where the big rub is with collegiate players and through our discussions with World Rugby is that if they're reliant upon mum and dad potentially putting money into their account to pay off, they might have a scholarship, but pay off the remainder, they're not actually self-reliant. So they're not establishing residency themselves. So they actually see that as a time away from their natural country. Let's say they're an Englishman, from away from England. So you might see that. The reality is that what you could see is that a team may potentially, and there is the option to it, but I know the league kind of frowns upon it, but that once an F1 visa is the student visa that's given to an international athlete, once they finish, they actually have a year as this optional practical training. So it's a year to find a job, experience the US, work. That in theory, they could leverage that. But look, the reality is that international players will be they should be transitioning to an O1 or a P1 visa. That's a 5K hit for a club that might already be cash strapped. So a bit of a long-winded answer, but obviously it is it's a pretty big thing. And for our, for the viewers, again, why isn't a kid that I know that potentially could be in the top 10? Why isn't he being picked? GMs are factoring this in and head coaches into their decision making.
Absolutely. And before we're going to go to Rick Collins in a little bit, who's at the Dallas Jackals watch party for the draft. But, real quick before we go to that, we had Wesley White on the show. Oh man, it's probably been a year now. And, he ran into those exact issues where he was given a car by his father just so he can get around and live life and work in the off season to finish out that F1 visa. He was given, money for his birthday. It was a birthday gift, and they deemed it too much money, and it set back his residency requirement to the 5-year mark because he was previously under the 3-year mark. So, little things like that. And he spoke openly about that on our interview. So it's nothing new, but he's, for new fans, you might not realize that something that little might throw off your residency eligibility. Real quick, we're going to listen to a little video from our friends, Ryan Fitzgerald and our buddy Coach Macy at LU before we hit Rick Collins. So enjoy, fellas.
So as a coach, we can do a lot to help the players. A lot of it comes down to helping them get materials together, both on-field resume, off-field resume. We host their highlights on our team social media to kind of get them out there a little bit. And then on-field wise, our strength coach, Matt Matau, does a really good job kind of meeting with those guys, figuring out what testing, if any, they're worried about, and he can help bolster just so they present a little bit better. Our guys are pretty mature and pretty professional by the time they're, graduating. So it's not like we have to work on interview skills and things like that. But as a coach as well, I just want them to understand what their options are. The league, rightly so, works really hard to, try to take away agency from the players and, in this process. And I just want the players to understand what choices they have, what options they have as they go into it. Because the teams, rightly so, are looking out for the teams, and, somebody has to be an advocate for players.
Yeah, a piece of advice I think is, for the player is obviously be open-minded about everything. As far as one of the biggest things right now to making an MLR roster, I think, is versatility. So I think saying yes to trying any position, being open-minded. A lot of times, players play in college. You play a certain position. Maybe you play 8, but you didn't play 6. Maybe you played lock, but now you're playing 8. Whatever it is, or you played wing, or you played outside center in college, and now they might give you a shot at wing here and there. Whatever it is. Be open-minded, say yes to everything. I said the same thing when I was in the NFL for the NFL draft. Guys looking to make the roster is say yes to everything. Special teams, kickoff, punt team. I think that's one of the biggest things. And be a sponge, open-minded to learn everything. And that's really one of the biggest things that sometimes get lost in the draft is you hear about ability and you hear about speed and this guy's step and everything, but rugby IQ and learning the game and being open-minded to becoming, trying to get better every single day.
And we're back, everybody, and joining us is Rick Collins from the Jackal Den at the Dallas Jackals watch party for the draft. For those of you that don't know Dallas, again, it's deja vu. They have the number 1 pick. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, as excited as I was last year, I'm a little more excited since now, of course, we have a mascot, so that makes us official, right?
I guess so. Rooney doesn't have a mascot. They're official.
I thought it was a rooster. What happened to that?
Chicken.
Am I not allowed to say that on the show?
That last time in NOLA on the 27th when I was down there, I witnessed it personally.
Benji in the chicken suit doesn't count, but Rick, thank you so much for coming on. And real quick before we go to Rick, if you're not watching, the coverage is on Fox Sports 2 right now. Stacey Pates, Dan Power, and the number 1 pick from last year, Connor Mooneyham, are breaking it down. We're here with the Rugby Rant. This is the watch along. Again, I'm the Scott the Big Guy Ferrara. That's Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. JD Stephenson, the Vice President of Player Operations at NOLA Gold, and Rick Collins from the Jackal Den. So Rick, how many people you got at the watch party?
So we only got about 5-6 people so far because everybody thought it was starting at 6, and then we got the updated time, and I've been trying to push it, but people got to work. We're not living on the East Coast. It's not time yet here.
Right? They got to afford season tickets, brother.
That's true. I lucked out that I
do have
vacation.
Tickets, though. I'm ready to go for this year. Front row, seats 1 and 2. The Section 108, or was where I call it Section 8. Of course, those in the military or familiar with the military will be familiar with Section 8. So we're going to be rowdy and proud and crazy, and we're excited. We got a stadium. We got, apparently we're going to have players, is my understanding already, before the draft even occurs. And the biggest question down here is the head coach.
Yeah. So Rick, tell us, a lot of shifting in the draft board has happened. And I'm interested in just getting your take and perhaps bringing JD in here for a moment, picking his brain about what Dallas may do. But I think Dallas has, 5 picks? They got the number 1 pick. They traded, we believe they traded some foreign player spots or maybe some cash. We're not quite sure. A way to get some additional picks in the draft. So what do you think they're going to do with that number 1 pick? Which direction do you think they're going to go?
I actually think, last year they went with the extremely athletic, extremely experienced back, right? A guy who could step on the field and play right away. Obviously, we saw it. Mooneyham was legit MLR material. Made the Eagles traveling squad. Unfortunately, because of injury, couldn't go. But a significant contributor on that Austin team when he was healthy. You looked around the league at all the guys that the Czechos brought in. Not a lot of big names, but every single one of them was huge on their team. You saw what Ryan James did. You saw in New England. He was actually picked as the number 8 of the league this season. What I think they'll do is they'll continue to stay with youngsters. They're going to bring in guys like Conradi, who are not as well known from overseas, but I see them going, I think, loose forward.
Interesting.
From what I've seen from video and talking to Mikey, who you just had on a few minutes ago, that it doesn't look like there's that dynamic back. Connor Mooneyham, a guy who's played for 10 years, had a lot of overseas experience that I'm seeing will be a starter right away. There's a couple of loose forwards though that I think can come in and play right off the bat, and I think that's the direction that they'll go in the draft.
And real quick, I see JD nodding his head. Is that something you think is the right step, JD, for them?
Yeah, look, I agree with Rick, right? Like, I think that you want to offset kind of what Connor brings, and something a little bit different. And I think definitely, in those kind of top 1 or 2 positions, you've got a large dichotomy in terms of how you want to play the game with some of the players there. So I honestly don't think you can do much wrong in terms of where the pick is. I'm actually just excited to see, what Elaine and co do with it.
It's funny you mentioned the dynamics of some of the backs. I think there were a few guys that fit that bill, but you're right. There wasn't that guy at number 10 that's really going to stand out and be able to go on the field to play in the MLR from day one. There was a guy I really liked that I thought might be able to, maybe even by mid-season, could step in there for 20 to 40 minutes after learning a bit, and that was Alejandro Torres, and he has a lot of international experience. I don't know whether anybody and I threw it back and forth. JD and I were going back and forth, but he really had the dynamism that I would look for if I was going to pick a back that I wanted to see someplace on the pitch to make an impact as a young player.
Yeah,
what do you
I
think?
agree, Hammer. Yeah. I think I would probably go a little bit of a different point of view if I'm in Rick's shoes. And unfortunately, he's no longer in the draft, though. Would be a George Phelan type player that gives you a little bit more versatility. I think the reality is if you as a fledgling program, you want versatility and based on a head coach coming in, you want them to be able to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife for you. So, potentially a midfielder or potentially outside back option for you. Rick, I suppose you'd have a better insight there, mate.
I will say from the backs I saw, there wasn't anybody that extremely stood out from the video. And I was a little bit disappointed with the video this year. I thought there were some really good I think longer cuts last year, bro, the draft that really gave you a better idea of what the player was like. You would really have to do a deep dive, contacting the coaches and getting more video to really get an idea of what these players can do. But the player that looked the most dynamic to me was Russell Cuddy. I think Colorado State guy from Colorado Springs. Does that sound right? Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But extremely talented looking player, physical, strong to break down, good and loose. And every time he got tackled, it was 5-6 meters past minimum past the line of scrimmage. That's the kind of player that I think, the Jackals need, that they can bring in a Bronson Tellis type player. And a guy who can, he may not start right away, but he's going to put in a lot of minutes for him.
Well, I got a guy in Leon Patel Champion and Call Me a Homer, Rooney Academy guy, Nyack, a New York guy. But, he showed a lot at the Rugby Showcase. He has a lot of tape. He's been around the block a few times. I mean, you have a hooker there in a spine position that nailed 100% of his throws with guys in lineouts that he doesn't play with ever. But he nailed every throw no matter what. It didn't shake him when a guy dropped the ball or the jump didn't happen. The throw was there. So imagine a guy like that, getting a November to February camp with a new team. I think he's a guy that, I don't necessarily know if you take him with your first pick, but considering you guys have 5 picks in this draft, I think it's somebody that you can consider. One, I don't think he needs a lot of massaging to get to that level. I think he just needs fitness and, the regular things you need as a professional to get there. But, his hooking was great. Again, his throwing was great. His speed was good. His reps were up there. His vertical was so-so, but let's be honest, you don't need a hooker to jump. And he was kicking the ball a little bit like Dylan Fawston. So I think, JD was talking about, loose forwards kicking before with the try leader of the MLR, Dylan Fawcett, scoring a bunch of tries off of chip kicks. Maybe you want a hooker that chip kicks too.
So let me jump in real quick. I think it's interesting you brought up the hooker. One of the guys that, I think after last year's draft, and JD, you can comment on this most certainly, that everybody kind of scratched their heads and went, was Mason Cook, right? There were a lot of folks down there that kind of scratched their heads and said, what were they doing? Who is this guy? And it's funny because he stepped right into a skill position. He backed up, the name of their standard or their everyday hooker escapes me, but I'm sure JD knows. And then he came in due to injury, slotted in for a couple games, one man of the match, scored 2 tries, and really established himself as somebody who can come in long term and play hooker as an American. And then JD, what about in the backs, like a guy like Caleb Strum? He's been mentioned on some of the comments. Can you talk about those 2 positions potentially?
Yeah, so I think, myself personally, and I'm just speaking anecdotally here, I think that, it's pretty evident that, the number one source of try origin in the MLR, is through the lineout. And if you're looking at kind of the league average, right, like over 70% of them are within 3 or 4 phases. It's around 3 and a bit phases. So the line out is so important there. So look, it starts with the throw. And it's something that I think is extremely important. I know that, a bit of feedback from the combine and looking at the footage, that is one of the first things that we are looking at is a hooker's ability to throw. And then really, again, back to my kind of previous point is how do you see that hooker playing? The big guy touched on it, right, with Fawcett. I mean, year 2 is kind of the modern game, is essentially another back rower for you. So having that skill set, the ability to run, pass and kick, and that edge attacker, is kind of key. I know that, just on Caleb, it's really interesting, right? That players that are going to an event that you're able to compare apples to apples, they're able to really quickly elevate, because if you've been, player X you've been looking at and player Y comes along and he's on par with X or a little bit better, it carries a little bit more stock. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see Caleb go, in the first round here. Just again on that physical side, I liken him to a Gannon Moore for Utah, type winger. And again, look at the kicking's increased in the modern game. Contestable kicks are in vogue. You need height you don't necessarily need height, but it does help if you're able to be a bit taller and be able to contest aerially. So,
real quick, just part of the FS2 broadcast, they're going to commercial and they're going to come back with their first pick. So I got a question, JD. You were saying comparing apples to apples. Now, I'm trying to get a sense of throwing it out there for either fans who don't know it or international fans who don't understand. Guys might have bad reps here at things like the Rugby Showcase, but I mean, 3 years of film doesn't lie, right? So if a guy has a bad, showing at the Rugby Showcase, is that really going to deter somebody if you've already interviewed them and you like them and you have 3 years of tape on them?
No, I don't think so. I think though that it will. There is a valid question though as to why, right? Like I think that there is one thing. We talk about those intangibles. There's that big game temperament. So is it something to do with stepping up and being at the next level? And you see some really unassuming players that can step up and they don't do those massive X factor things, but stepping up seems to be quite seamless for them as a player. And that's something that's really valued in the eyes of coaches and GMs as well.
I'd like to add to that. I think JD and again, comment if you can. I think consistency speaks a lot too, right? I mean, a guy like Moni Tanguia down in NOLA, a guy like Hanko Hermesais, those guys give you quality minutes week in and week out, no holds barred. They always show up and play well. And I think, doesn't that speak to some of those intangibles that GMs and coaches are looking for?
100%. Yeah, that's it. I mean, the reality is that you need players that can do that are just more than and Guerra touched on it, right? More than just the X factor moments. So they're in 80 minutes, and look, that's the game, right? It's not a sevens game. It's not one or two good moments. It's a series of moments over 80 minutes.
For sure.
And we're just waiting for
I had
FS2.
a question, JD, as we come back. How difficult was it to get enough tape based on basically a lost year for a lot of universities, right? Not everybody was able to play a full season or even a season. I'm the director of rugby at SMU here in Dallas. We did not even have a season. So I had an entire senior class lose that opportunity to showcase, where they were. Just continue on that. Yeah.
Yeah, Rick, I think, look, it comes back to, that with you guys at SMU, I mean, there'd be junior footage on your boys. The other piece is, where are they spending their off seasons? Are they playing club rugby? Is there, sevens opportunities? And then look, short of that, and some of the things I did see, I made a joke to it before, but I've alluded to it. I have seen players actually, filming them kicking, them passing, and you can actually get a pretty good understanding of their ability, their motor pattern movements, not necessarily their skills because you can't see it under pressure, but you can get a pretty good understanding of potentially how well-rounded they are technically. The reality is we did rely heavily on some older footage. And I think a lot of it, to Fitzy's comments with having discussions the night before with players, a lot of it is a bit of a leap of faith in terms of the player itself. So you're looking at the pedigree, what school they go to, what their coach is saying about them, what their junior or, sophomore experiences look like. And then really, in this day and age, and I think even with the NFL draft, in lieu of having a combine, it was a bit of a leap of faith on some of these kids. And I think that's going to be the case tonight as well.
Yeah, and I want to touch upon you struck a great chord with me. I think that, over the last year, since last year's draft, a lot of people out there have been pretty critical of the draft and saying, oh, these guys, why do we need to draft, go to academies? It doesn't tell us much. A lot of these guys, aren't draft ready or we haven't heard from them. And I think that's a little short-sighted from what I've seen. I mean, I think 7 or 8 guys made significant contributions from last year's draft. Out of 24, that's 1/3. And if you look at the NFL, I mean, realistically, out of the first round, what percentage of the first round draft picks actually make big time noise their rookie year, right? And how many guys actually miss in the NFL where they do all that research, they have all the money they can put into all the things that JD's talked about and more, and yet they still find it hard to predict, success based upon the footage, based upon the research. So I think the strike rate for the draft actually last year, I was really, really impressed with the strike rate. How many of those guys have been able to contribute to Major League Rugby rosters in their rookie seasons?
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited when I looked at the numbers and what I thought they would be able to put forward in terms of minutes out of that class. I thought there's going to probably be 4 guys who put out, 30 to 40 minutes a match. There might be 2 guys that start, right? And then the rest of the guys are just going to be doing, they might get 2 or 3 matches playing 5 to 10 minutes, right? Way beyond that. I mean, you had guys like Connor Mooneyham. Every game he was in, he was starting pretty much. You had other guys who were starting half of their matches. I'm really, really impressed with the way that those players were able to transition, because you see college kids go to men's club, and there's a transition period, a serious transition period for a lot of them going over. And for them to transition, that just tells you how much better the college programs are getting, especially the higher level ones, right? And also how well the MLR is prepping these kids going into the season.
Yeah.
And sorry to jump in, Rick, but we had Robin Remescue on, and that's one thing he talked about was the Penn State program specifically that he was in, it was practice 5 days a week, have a match, have a day of rest, and rolling into the Rooney season in 2020, he felt the transition was way easier. Obviously, physicality was a little different. You had to learn the playbook, getting used to personalities, things like that. But he felt that going into camp, at least, it was way easier for him to transition. And you're going to see that from top level guys, LU, St. Mary's, Iona, Penn State, who missing Cal, I'm missing a whole bunch of people. But I think each collegiate program is going to start creeping up there when they realize how big this draft event is and how big the MLR is going to get in the next 10 years.
Hey, big guy, is it possible? Could we cue up that piece from Josh Mason where he talks a little bit about what they've done at a top tier program to prep kids for playing at the next level? Do we have that?
I think it's this part. So let's roll it real quick.
Level skill that I often see overlooked is just learning how to learn, like learning how to create an improvement plan for yourself. A lot of players, they think if I just show up early and I stay late, like I'll just get better. But for most guys, they're just kind of spinning their wheels because they're not directing their efforts efficiently, right? So, for our boys, we use training and match video extensively. We have, GPS data they can use. And, so we are in the habit week over week, year over year of kind of creating these little pathways for them to improve. And I know it's one thing that our guys are going to take to the next level and be confident in, right? If you're coming from a program, that maybe doesn't use those things, it's going to be a shock to your system when somebody's watching your practice reps on a screen or comparing you to another player. How do I do that without just, asking the coach, how do I start, right? Be able to make a plan, be able to follow a plan, and put all of that effort you're going to put in the right places.
It sounds probably cliche, but obviously.
Hey, sorry to cut that short, but the Dallas Jackals have selected Eric Naposki Abdullah with the number 1 pick in the draft per George Killebrew. If you're watching on FS2, if you're not watching, Team Loren's going to show the second half of the draft internationally. So again, that's Eric Naposki Abdullah. JD, you have anything on him?
Yeah, so I actually coached Eric for the USA Falcons. So Eric's a pretty highly rated sevens player. And in terms of a lot of his footage, Rick, we were talking about outside backs before, but, a lot of his footage is actually centered around his sevens game. And look, the kid's got one of the best steps I've seen, and like his feet and his acceleration are electric. He comes from a great program. We talk about what does it look like, a daily kind of grind. Dave Clancy does a great job at UCLA, and setting these guys up. So, fingers crossed, it's an easy transition, for Eric. I do kind of, I guess, thinking about, positionally, where does he slot in? I think, we spoke about that versatility factor. I think that coming from a sevens, background where he plays, 9, bit of fly half and is also sweeping a while as sevens. There's a chance we could see him as a halfback or a scrum half, or potentially, as an outside back as well. So, it's an exciting pick.
Yeah, and as a Bruin, as a UCLA member, we talked about that transition into that pro system. So I think again, he's going to have an easy time transitioning on those little things to help him make those big steps. And honestly, at this point, without him, making up any plays in the MLR. I think we can almost call him a Connor Mooneyham 2.0. So
I literally
Rick,
was just saying that. I love the pick. It's Connor Mooneyham 2.0. Watching his highlights, he has dynamic playmaking ability. Connor Mooneyham, of course, played a lot of 10. I actually think he could, like you were saying, I think a scrum half is a possibility. If he learns that pass, his ability to make plays with his feet, his speed could be hugely advantageous there. But again, this is a guy who they can fit in a multitude of different back positions, and could probably come in and play right away, maybe on the wing. Right, you put him out on the wing, start training him at 10, 15, probably fit back at 15 on occasion. But just a super dynamic player. And knowing Elaine, this is the type of player that they love to look at, is a player who's extremely dynamic in a loose. Not necessary that they are, perfect in restarts, that they're perfect at, set plays, right? But a guy who can make things happen when, everything breaks down. And this guy, based on everything I've seen, can do everything when things.
So JD, let me just jump in here. You're familiar with Eric and at least understand both his tangibles and intangibles, and clearly he has some physical gifts in terms of his step, his ability to be elusive, his ability to be dynamic. My question when I saw him, and I'm not asking for a hey, he'll be a home run, but my question is, does he have the physical presence to step on the pitch, in February? And bring an element to the Dallas Jackals, because he's not quite as big and physical as Mooneyham is.
Right. Yeah. Look, I think, they are two different players. And I think that players that have, great elusive feet, they're doing it for a reason, whereas Connor can actually take contact, and, his running lines and support lines are great. And, the contact piece isn't an issue for him. Where I look at someone like Eric, with a quarter of the tries, in the league coming from turnover and kick receipts, finding those seams of the space that, that you're finding on the kick returns or turnover ball, I think that's going to be where he'll be able to live, and that'll be his bread and butter. I think, like anyone, really that's the acid test, because a lot of these guys, outside of playing sevens, they haven't played senior men's 15s. And for everyone on the call, we all know that, right? Like it is a big physical step up towards that. But look, I think that he's going to, he's a guy that will build on the strengths that he has, that elusive, and create, creative type player. I think that he's going to bring a different and play a different style of play that necessarily won't, worry too much about being overly physical or being in that physical space, if you would, Hammer.
And so Houston's on the clock with the second pick. It's coming up in a couple minutes. Rick's going to drop off a little bit. He's going to rejoin us right before pick 10 to talk about that Jackals pick. So Rick, we'll see you in a little bit.
Sure, thanks, brother.
So coming up on pick 2, I think it's one of those things where, Houston, I think, has a lot to deal with, but I also feel like, and again, this is me talking, and I know JD probably can't talk to this professionally, but it just seems as though there was an issue at the top organizationally. So I think they've cleared that out now. They're getting ready to make a move, and they're here to make a pick here. And let's see. Emmanuel Albert is the second pick in the draft, and he's actually getting his jersey. I got to say, this is a big deal. He's getting his jersey. He's, gives the hug to Commissioner Killebrew, and our buddy Henneke is giving him his jersey. And sorry, I'm kind of waxing poetic about it, but for obviously Lindenwood pick, Hammers, I'm sure ecstatic. I'm sure I heard Preston yell somewhere. But it's nice to see that we're getting to that point where these guys can be on camera and have their moment. So Rob, what do you think about this pick for Houston?
Well, of course, I'm a homer, right? I love it. But I think EJ Emmanuel has the ability to step on that pitch and give quality minutes from day one. He has the physical size. I mean, that's one of the things that, as I've talked to players that came out of last year's draft and into the MLR, and I'm talking about, guys like Guerra, guys like Bronson Tellis, who we'll hopefully hear from soon in some of our video footage. That's what they talk about, is the physicality. So that's the number one thing that you're looking forward to forward is the physicality. I don't think he's going to play in the second row like he did in at Lindenwood. I think they're going to put him probably on a blind side or potentially groom him to play number 8. But he's got that physical size. He's got that physical ability. He's mobile. I wouldn't say he has ridiculous pace for a loose forward, but he's got good feet. And he obviously has ability to go into contact and take contact in the tackle. So I love the pick.
And he's a Minnesota boy. Am I right about that?
Yes, 100%.
Gotta love those real Midwestern guys out of Minnesota. But yeah, I mean, I think you're picking up a solid product here for Houston. I think it's a solid pick. Meyer coming in his first year and being in. I'm assuming this is the first time Meyer has ever heard of a draft. So it's interesting. And wow. Third pick. Sorry, third pick, Seattle. And I just hold on. Who the heck is it? I can't. Of course, the broadcast went too fast for me.
Tavita Lopetti.
Rob, are you seeing who they picked? Seattle?
I think something tells me JD's pretty up on who's being selected here. Go ahead, JD. Pretty up on who's.
Yeah, so Taviti Lopetti out of St. Mary's Center. I mean, that's a great pick. And I think, we talk about quality programs. I mean, St. Mary's and what Tim, has done. I mean, the guy's building, a dynasty there, and he's got some great, assistant coaches in Johnny Everett and Brendan O'Meara, who's also been part of the junior national team coaching setup. So, I mean, they're a program that kind of consistently, doesn't do anything kind of too flashy. You don't see them out, anything like that. But I mean, consistently they're top 4 or national champions. And I mean, just have a look at the kind of current Eagles pool right now. I mean, they're littered with, St. Mary's grads. So,
JD, I'm going to interrupt you here. They're kind of going through. So after Seattle was Toronto picking the first Canadian, Logan Martin Feek, I believe, at a University of Victoria. And San Diego is making their 5th pick. So hold on.
Oh, wow.
There you go. Jonah Dietenberger there with the commissioner getting his handshake. Another Lindenwood, a lock. And maybe JD can speak to this. You can't teach height. So how important is it to get a good lock?
Yeah, I mean, look, and Hammer's got intimate knowledge here of Jonah, but I mean, again, we can't coach 6'5". And I think, look, he's another Midwestern kid, he's a Wisconsin boy. So I know that Fitzy's probably kicking himself on that. But, it's, look, I think, again, that's another quality pick, comes from a great program. And I think you can't underplay. I think there's two ways to look at it, right? That the ability for a kid to transition from basically a professional setup at collegiate level makes a seamless transition. The other players, though, that we would, hopefully see here today that, are coming from maybe not necessarily established programs. I mean, the reality there is, you look at potentially there's more potential with those players because they get into a setup or they get into an environment and the sky's the limit for someone like that. So, yeah, no, Jonah, great pick. I mean, Hammer, this is something close to your heart as well.
Yeah, here's what I like about Jonah. Obviously, can't teach height, and that's an initial sell when you just see him. He has a great frame. He can put on more weight. Here's what I like about Jonah. He's got a nastiness. He's got an edge, and I think that's an important piece to play in the league, especially in the forward pack. You gotta want to get dirty. You want to get your nose in there. You want to get your your hands over the ball. You want to be able to stay on your feet and do that dirty work that Andrew talked about in his interview there. And I think Jonah loves that part of the game. When I would watch him, oftentimes I would see him, after a little nasty skirmish, after getting in there and getting dirty, he would come over with this wry smile on my face, much to the similar to a big lockdown there in South Africa that we just saw play in the Rugby Championship last weekend. So I love the pick. I think it didn't shock me at all that he went in the first 5.
Sorry, I'm just updating some of our viewers. Some of our international viewers are watching us and having a hard time following on FS2 because I don't think it's available in certain places like Canada, believe it or not. So I'm just updating the picks here. But yeah, I think you're right. You can't teach height, you can't teach nastiness. And I think that's something that I kind of slapped Paul Mullen around for in the past international matches. Unfortunately, I think he wasn't as nasty as he should have been to those young Englishmen and those young Irishmen. Paul Mullen's been around the block. He lives on a little island off of Ireland. That's where he comes from. He's a tough guy. So maybe it was just, between MLR fatigue, him playing in just about every Utah match, trying to have 4 days of practice, traveling, across the Atlantic Ocean. I just think it didn't come out. But it comes out when he plays in the MLR. So, you know that is effective. It gets people off their game. And those little cheeky little things you do, especially as in a tight 5 situation, are sometimes, how you get mentally into other people's heads. I see Rob's face and he's already, Lindenwood 2 in the top 5. I'm sure he's going to be like, my son Preston plays at Lindenwood and all that bullshit. So just get ready for it, folks.
I don't need to do that. You just did it for me. But Biddy, I want to just address and go back to pick number 4, Logan Martin Feek, for our Canadian friends down there that are listening from up north. Do you have any insights or any thoughts on Logan and what kind of player he can develop into? He was selected by Seattle, right? Or was that
correct?
Yeah.
Oh, no, you were selected by Toronto.
No, Toronto. Yeah. So look, guys, I think if I'm being realistic here, what you might find is obviously the Canadian eligible players being picked up potentially by Toronto, and then obviously only limited to American teams, if you would, picking up American players, unless like a Lockie Krat situation in which they're a US citizen. But I mean, if Canada was able to produce the quantity of players in which we're able to in the US, I mean, it'd be a lot tougher at U18s, U20s, U23s, and obviously our senior team. So he's a quality inside back, and looking at his footage, I mean, again, we talk about dynasties. I mean, the program which he comes from is a Canadian dynasty, that's well coached and well connected. So I see it as being a pretty seamless kind of transition, and hopefully a player in which Kingsley's looking at for for higher honors.
Hey,
Yep.
I just got contacted by Jonah. He's willing to join us, so hopefully we might be able to get Jonah on here. So for fans that are looking to hear from Jonah a little bit more, we can get him on here in a couple of minutes. So
real quick, Rooney's coming up with their pick here.
The big guy sporting wood.
And this is the pick that sent DeMonte Noble from the supplemental draft. Chase Shore Haskins, a Life University. I know Rob's going to give me shit for it because I love Life, because you got guys like Dylan Fawcett, Alex McDonald, and you know what Life does? They beat teams like Lindenwood. So I love them. I love that pick. It's a great pick.
Let's not forget Lindenwood beat Life this year too.
Yeah, in a COVID year, it doesn't count. But he's a number. He's a number 8.
It's all rugby, brother. It's all rugby.
In my opinion, a little undersized, but I wonder if he's gonna play, under guys like, my boy Kyle Sumption. So we'll see. And the AG's pick is coming in. Let's see. Caleb Strum, University of Alabama. We were just talking about him, a showcase player. Mikey Brown was talking about him. JD was talking about him going to the AGs. I don't think that's a surprise. I think he fits right in there. And as Dylan Pharisee said, the Rooney pick is a harpooner. # go Pooners.
It's all good. So Austin just made a pick. What was that again?
And they're going right again. The Free Jacks pick, man, they're just going right after it in this broadcast.
It's like chocolates out of a candy machine.
Seriously. Hey, another Lindenwood. Cale Hodgson. Got another guy at the Rugby Showcase. So it's funny because everybody was talking crap about the Rugby Showcase. Two guys from the Rugby Showcase going in the top 10 right now. So to me, you're taking the guy who's Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. He was the top try scorer this year at Lindenwood.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if he's top try scorer.
He was. I'm sure he was up top there.
Yes.
He's still at the Rugby Showcase to go and talk to some of these GMs, and New England was one of those guys there. So I think the Rugby Showcase is showing us that it's working. Hold on, sorry guys. Utah.
Jeez, we don't even have time to talk about some of these guys, man. I will say.
Hold on. Joseph Bakke from Western Michigan at number 8. It was a NOLA Gold pick. NOLA Gold traded back, I believe, for some cash considerations in the cap. Utah trades up to get the guy they want. And we have Jonah live here. I'm going to bring Jonah in, guys. Jonah, how you doing, brother?
Not too bad. How are we doing?
Doing great. Listen, the newly minted in the MLR. How does it feel?
It's a dream come true. It's been a lot of work, hard work over the years at Lindenwood, but it's good to say it paid off, I guess.
Yes. So how are you and your family celebrating this newfound success, or at least step in your success?
We went to a local bar back in Wisconsin, and I got to see them, how they reacted, and it was overwhelming feeling.
And real quick, Rick's going crazy.
And he looks really low with the angle there.
Yeah, well, we have DeCord Davis going to number 10 to the Jackals. That was Rooney's traded back out for more cap considerations. DeCord Davis, another showcase guy.
So, Jonah, real quick, we don't want to take a ton of your time. We know you're celebrating with your family. You have to be excited about being selected. When are you going to get started getting ready to bring yourself up to the next level? What are your plans for the next couple of weeks?
I guess talking to the team, really, I haven't really gotten to do that yet. This is the whole surprise, actually, because they didn't reach out. But I'm excited to see what they have to say and what they think I can provide to the team.
Awesome. Well, and we know you'll do good things there. And like I said, get your nastiness, get your edge out there on the MLR pitch next season. I know I'm excited as a Lindenwood fan. And of course, I wish you all the success and best of luck next season. And a big congratulations on being a drafted player in the first round.
Thank you. All right, you guys.
All right. And thanks, Jonah. We appreciate it. ATL picking a hooker, Isaac Hales out of Iowa. Again, I missed a pick there in between. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to do a couple things at once, but we have Chase here coming on. I'm going to bring him on, guys.
How you guys doing?
We're well. How are you, Chase?
I'm good.
Congratulations, mate, on being selected to the MLR. It has to feel really, really good seeing all your hard work and commitment to your craft come to fruition.
Most definitely. Yeah, it's a great feeling, something I've been looking forward to for a while now.
Yeah, so, and JD, if you want to step in with some questions, by all means, jump in. But one that I have is, for guys that are, maybe thinking about that are juniors and seniors going into that year, what would you tell them now that you've gotten to this point? What would you tell them to think about as they head into their junior or senior year and maybe thinking about, going into the MLR draft next year in 2022?
Yeah, so I definitely think it would be a great idea for them to join the draft. I think the draft has been something great that came about to just give more and more players the opportunity to, present themselves and put their names out there, as well as something like the Rugby Showcase as well that has been put into place. Another opportunity to put your name out there. And some advice that I would give them is honestly just, focus on your game, on your craft, on your headspace, and just control what you can control. And don't worry too much about the outside variables, because if it's meant to be, it will fall into place.
And real quick, the last pick of the first round was Sam Klimkowski. He was a big producer at the showcase, topping out reps at 29. He probably could have gone 30. After speaking to him after doing the reps on the 225, he said he was starting to feel it in his shoulders and wanted to be ready for that 5-on-5 work. He's a big dude. He has big fucking thighs, and I think Alex Corbacero fell in love with him. A lot of guys at the showcase did, and interestingly enough, I think word got around because L.A. Giltinis was not one of the teams that was at the showcase. So he put up impressive numbers not only in the agility drill. His vertical was high. I mean, we're talking about a 320-pound prop here who was obviously putting big numbers up on the bench press, but he was frigging quick. Some guy taught him how to run. So imagine him with a ball in hand. I want to see him and James Rochford hit each other next season when we go out to LA.
So Chase, before we let you go, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it's a pleasure. You really make what we're doing here a lot of fun because you bring, that firsthand experience to the fans. Give some folks some insights. We all know that, MLR guys aren't making, big time bank. It's really about commitment, wanting to play rugby, about being committed to really growing as a player. Give us some background. What is your major? What might you looking to be doing to supplement perhaps what you're going to be doing in the MLR?
Yeah, so my major is psychology, and as I move forward, I'm looking to step into the field of sports psychology, and so looking forward to pro rugby is just going to be another asset to help me with that career as well. So yeah.
I think JD could probably speak to the importance, and I think the next step for teams as they begin to advance their metrics is probably to have on staff a sports psychologist, to at least have somebody that players can talk to give them that edge. When you get at that high level, man, it's 1 or 2%, and that a lot of that can be mental, right, Chase?
Exactly, 100%. No, I agree completely. I've had my own bouts and experiences, the highs, the lows. Rugby and a lot of sports is just as much or more mental than physical. As physical as sport as rugby is, the mental aspect is huge. And, I've just come to realize that more and more. So I agree with you completely. And I hope to do something like that one day.
Awesome.
And I got to be honest before he goes, dealing with guys like Luke Hume, you're going to need some psychological edge because Luke Hume's a player. So welcome to Rooney, buddy.
Yeah, I got the skills. I got the techniques. I think I'll be all right.
Well, hey, Chase, thanks again for joining us. I sincerely appreciate it. The big guy, JD, sincerely appreciates it. And the Rugby Rant hopes to stay in touch through your rookie season and just I'll be in touch with you, getting updates and seeing how you're doing. And it's always a pleasure to watch guys like yourself grow into the player they can be at the next level. Thanks, brother. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on. Have a great one.
Congrats, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So yeah, we completed the first round of the MLR draft. Really excited. Some top prospects there. We were talking about Caleb Strum with Mikey Brown before. Sam Klimkowski, like I said, was on everybody's big board, at least just on measurables and his game tape coming out of a small school at Notre Dame College. We had our first Canadian picked finally, which was a big sticking point for not only Rob and I, but all the Canadian fans last year of them not being, eligible because they're in the draft. JD, they are North American players, so they don't count against that foreign player spot. And we saw a lot of Canadians move kind of south. Well, I mean, I get every Canadian moved south because Toronto was playing in Atlanta, but we had a lot of teams, a lot of guys who were, either Toronto Arrows in 2020 or, maybe they just started their MLR career, come to other teams. So, I mean, it's not far-fetched to maybe see some of these Canadian guys get picked on these American teams. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, they're quality players. And again, I think the reality is, we both understand if we think, as playing kind of countries, USA Rugby and Rugby Canada, the need for competitive play between the two of us, because it's our kind of most natural rival and competitor, and a stronger Canada makes a more stronger US, and that's indicative in the level of play as well. But, in terms of, I spoke to it before, right? Like there is the issue though with the visa with Canadian guys. You still need to get a visa for them unless they have a US passport. So there is that kind of little hiccup with them. But I mean, the ones that have been given opportunities, just look at, NOLA with Eric Howard and Cole Bailey. And then, this year adding, Lockie Kratz. I mean, there's some, they're international kind of world-class players. So, I'm excited to see them more in the league. Obviously, selfishly, I'd love to see more American players first and foremost, but, they bring a good edge and something different to the level of competition.
Speaking of American players, JD, we got somebody standing on deck here. We're going to bring on newly drafted MLR player Joseph Baki. Hey, Joey, you were talked a lot about especially by folks here in the Midwest who know you're familiar with you, of course, from Rugby, Illinois, going then over to Western Michigan, two places close to my heart. How does it feel to be a newly drafted MLR player ready to hone your craft in the spring?
I like the sound of that, MLR player. I'm just so blessed and thankful to be a part of the teams and have the coaching that I've had throughout my 15 years of playing rugby. Andrew Guerra, him and I are pretty good friends, and he's led the way, and I'm just following in his footsteps.
And those are some pretty damn good footsteps, my friend. Talk about, just for a moment, I've talked a little bit about some unique elements from each, but again, having familiarity coming from Rugby, Illinois, what are some things you've done just to kind of along the way bring your game to the next level so you get to this point of calling yourself a professional rugby player? Joey, did you get all that or not?
So some things that I've really done is just take advantage of every opportunity, every single opportunity I can. I was getting some feedback there, so I don't know if it cut off. But,
no, we're good, mate.
Every opportunity I could, every camp, every MLR camp, everything. Just take advantage of every opportunity.
And just so everybody who's watching knows, they're doing 3 picks at a time right now, so it's very hard to keep up with them. So they just hit me with 6 picks in a row, and I'm going to announce them as soon as I can see the replay. And just bear with us.
Before we go to the picks, I don't want to take a ton of Joey's time. How are you and your family celebrating tonight?
I got a lot of old friends, a lot of rugby guys from high school, from college over, some family, and we're just going to have a good time and celebrate and worry about what happens next tomorrow. Back to work tomorrow, though. There
you go. That's what we like to hear. Back to work tomorrow. Continuing the pedigree of Illinois rugby. I love it. I'm about to shed a tear here because I'm so excited that we're going to see some guys from the place that I began playing rugby mature into the MLR. My brother, stay in touch. Congratulations. Do good work. And we hope to see you getting quality minutes, my friend.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Congrats, man.
Have a good one.
Congrats, Charlie.
Thanks. Yeah, so going into the second round, like I said, I've missed the last 6 picks. I think I heard Tanashi's name called, though. I believe he's going to Seattle, is what I'm trying to pick up here. Another showcase guy. I know Mikey Brown, I think the showcase wanted at least 15 guys picked in the draft. I believe they were up to 6 in the first round. If you count Tinashe, who I believe went to Seattle in the second round, that's 7. So they're halfway there. I mean, they're almost at their goal.
JD, any reflections on Tinashe? I mean, he's a big unit out there. Where do you see him being slotted in at the next level?
I'm sorry. He went to Houston. I'm sorry, Houston.
Yeah, I think, look, again, right, like you nailed it there, Hammer. Again, it's a bigger physical player that, and I think too, the ties to Heineke and what he's all about. I think that was pretty evident with EJ's pick and now, with Tinashe's pick too, that you are getting a pretty good indication of what we can see in terms of an overall playing pool in Houston and the style of play in which has been successful for Heineke in the past. So, I think it's horses for courses and I think it's going to be a good fit. And, the SaberCat fans are going to be happy about that pick.
They have to be. It's, I'm glad you brought in Heineke. I mean, of course, he's a South African, and you can kind of see, like you said, the direction that he's going to want to go, picking big, strong, physical players, focusing on the forward pack, providing a platform for their offense to get their motor running, really looking to get quality ball at the breakdown. And so it's kind of interesting. A lot of folks out there who follow the league pretty tightly and saw Heineke get being brought on as director of rugby, we're kind of wondering, well, what's his mindset going to be? And I think these first two picks, as JD talked about, really give you an idea that he's not going to stray too far from home, and he's going to really go with a forward mentality, which is nice to see. And, shout out to our guy, Cody O'Neill, who got a lot of quality minutes at second row. I think, Cody's going to really be able to help those guys in their development as eyes on the field.
Absolutely. And I'm going to try and keep up with some of the picks here. I still haven't found those first 6 picks. I got to be honest, MLR social media is atrocious. I don't know how they're not keeping up, but apparently they're not. So that's fine. Real quick, let's just go over the first round. So Eric Naposki going to Dallas with the first. And then we had Emmanuel Albert going to Houston with the second pick, the third overall pick, Tavite Lopetti going to Seattle. Our first Canadian drafted, Logan Martin Feek, going to Toronto. After Logan, our buddy Jonah Dietenberg Berger going to San Diego. Chase Shore Haskin, who we just had on the show, going to my boys, the Roosters, Rooney. Caleb Strum, who was highly touted, and another guy that Michael Brown talked about, going to the AGs. Cale Hodgson's going to New England. Joseph Backey, who we just had on the show, going to Utah. Decord Davis, who we talked about out of Queens College, a big guy in the showcase who put up some numbers, going to Dallas at the 10th spot. The 11th spot, NOLA George Sharp. 12, Isaac Bales to Rugby ATL, and Sam Klimkowski, another big name in the Rugby Showcase, going to the Giltinis. And I'm trying to figure out, get at all these other picks, but they don't want to work with me here. They don't want to work.
JD, can you talk a little bit? I mean, we know you have intimate knowledge with NOLA. Like George Sharp probably wasn't one of those names that sticks out with some fans. Can you talk a little bit about the background behind Sharp, that pick for NOLA?
Yeah, so without giving away too many trade secrets here for Fitzy, but look, I spoke about it before, but it is accuracy around the throw. It's something which was highly valued, and when they we actually brought in a few players to do workouts, there's actually the 3 hookers were brought in. The feedback that we received was that would be the natural or the easiest progression through to the MLR level technically as a throwing hooker, and then obviously all the intangible pieces off the pitch, the way in which he carried himself, the communications in which the guys had with him were great. So again, I spoke to it earlier, but it's kind of a few boxes ticked, and then really a leap of faith, right? And then see what they do with the opportunity in the essentially in the fall, and hopefully set them up to make an impact come next year's season.
Yeah, and by the way, for fans that don't know, I mean, NOLA has 2 pretty strong hookers down there. Obviously, Eric Howard led them in 2018, 2019, and then a little bit in 2020. And then what we had O'Sullivan or O'Toole.
Yeah. Pat O'Toole, and then don't discount our other hooker, our St. Mary's boy as well.
Yeah, and so he has some pretty good on-field coaches that can help him through his rookie year.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what's cool, right? We talk about some of the environments in which these players are stepping into, and definitely ones in which they are learning environments. Unlike kind of some of the other professional setups that you do see, the players understand the fact that they're not necessarily competing directly with that player. So they see it as more of an understudy role and the ability for them to try and develop them. And definitely that was the case with the interactions with the guys drafted last year, that they felt that the senior players in the squad were, really helping their development and accelerate their learning. And Coach Macy spoke to it in the video as well, as actually helping them understand what it takes to compete at this level. So hopefully that's evident across the league, and we're going to see these young players stepping up and very quickly accelerating to look at Guerra, look at Mooneyham. Eagles within a year or two is awesome.
And just to recap the first 3 picks in the second round, we have Aaron Gray going to Dallas, Tinashe Muchena going to Houston, and Darrell Williams going to Seattle.
It's funny. Is that 3 Lindenwood picks going down to Houston? Is that the correct count?
That's 2. That's 2. I believe.
So the Lindenwood guys have gotten used to black and gold, and it's going to continue with a little bit with the black and yellow. But again, following the philosophy of Heineke Meyer, going with some big forwards, some big units up front that can do a lot of work around the pitch and hopefully poach ball down there and win some turnovers. I think that's going to be critical.
Toronto Arrows coming in with their second pick, another Canadian, Bryce Warden. He is a prop. I think he was under 20 Canada grad. So, I mean, obviously Toronto are picking up these guys coming out of their Rugby Canada system. What are the advantages of picking up a prop that you already know about, JD?
I mean, a UBC prop that played for Canada U20s, and I know firsthand about what the devastation of a Canadian front row can do to a US under 20 program. Having seen it kind of firsthand. So look, I think that's a great pick, and I think it's something that if you look just in the previous kind of 3 or 4 years in terms of the front rowers that Canada's been able to produce. There's a little bit of a conveyor belt there, but I spoke to it earlier about UBC, being a prestigious program of our northern counterparts, and yeah, I mean, I think not knowing kind of Bryce intimately, but I'm sure that he'll be a quality pick, and again, a front row option is always critical in this game. So I probably more though, and Big Guy probably just jump in on it, was impressed with Aaron Gray. So Aaron, similar to Eric Naposki, actually coached at the USA Falcons and has been a kind of a wider squad guy with the Sevens program. There's another very elusive, post-contact meters for a little guy. Him and Marcus Tupuola are actually, very similar type players. He's obviously been a part of the Sevens program, but that's a great pick up there at 14. And I honestly saw him potentially going in the first round. But another exciting, outside back. So, if the Jackals are looking to have a Sevens team, they're going to be pretty deadly. So,
and San Diego with their pick, Thomas Capriati, another name. We're seeing a lot of names. We're not seeing a lot of gems yet. I think we get into the second half of the second round, and the third round, you're going to see what us Americans call reach picks, guys who are projects, guys who they think that they can spend that they think have the value. Maybe not this year. Maybe it's the academy this year. Maybe it's a second or third stringer on your pro team. But we're going to get into what the big guy likes to call the championship round soon.
And I just had communication with Tinashe. I'm hoping he's going to join here in a minute. He's looking forward to joining us. But in between that time, JD, we've seen a couple props picked, Gunkowski, Warden. Do you see them stepping onto the pitch and contributing quality minutes? I mean, a comparable is someone like Matt Harmon, and even in Matt Harmon's case, we saw him kind of take a year to year and a half to develop a little bit. Do you think these guys are going to be MLR ready day one, or do you think, again, they're going to have to hone their craft a little bit and learn a little bit before they jump into the front row right away?
Yeah, I think front row is one of the, especially the dark arts that happen as we kind of joke about, but look, it is something that does take time. And I think it's just the physical nature. There's kind of two components, right? There's somewhat the safety aspect that you don't want to put players in a, unfamiliar position or anything, and I think the other piece is the learning curve with our front rowers, because, unfortunately, a lot of our scrummaging, in the country and even in the collegiate game, there's a very big difference between how, say a Lindenwood scrums versus, someone playing in Division 3 rugby. So, I think that's kind of why you're seeing a lot more projects. The other piece is that, like Thomas Capriotti, again, that's another front rower that comes from a good program, though. So, Penn State, Justin runs a great program there. That's a guy that, look, if you're in a pinch, I think could step up and be able to compete. The reality is, though, kind of like a quarterback in football, right? You want to give him a bit of time to mature and physically mature to make an impact.
Absolutely. And we have newly minted Houston Sabercat, Tanashi. How you doing, buddy?
I'm all right, man. How you guys doing?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Congratulations on being picked by Houston. Tell me, I mean, you're excited, right? This is a big deal.
It doesn't feel real yet. It's one of those things where I'm just standing here like hoping I wake up tomorrow morning and it's an actual thing.
And you have to be excited going to a team that's going to be directed by the likes of Heineke Meyer, with that forward mentality with their picks. So you're a big unit. What are you looking to? What kind of skills do you think you're going to be able to make and contribute to next season in 2022?
I think it's pretty obvious. The formula that's worked for me is being physical and being powerful, not only with run-ups but very short spaces. However, one thing I really didn't get to showcase that I really have in my bag is the ability to play the ball and have the ability to put people in space with my ball playing skills.
And we all know critical piece of the MLR.
But that was one of the things the showcase they didn't get to do because they did the scrum work kind of tight, and they put the ball in, and that was kind of it. And I could see Tinashe was looking to pick it up and go, and that just really wasn't something that was out there. But it's on your tape, so it's one of those things where I'm sure Houston was going crazy looking at your tape. Taylor Howden was at the rugby showcase. Me and him actually were talking about you a little bit. He compared you to a Hanko when you have the ball in space. Not only can you hit contact, but you can see big enough space where you could slip through and avoid contact to get a clean breakthrough. Something Taylor Howden was telling me about that he liked when he saw your tape.
Most definitely. I think in the tape you get to.
Nope. We lost Tinashe's audio.
Get something.
So. But yeah, it's one of those things where we're happy to see you. We're happy you went to the showcase to showcase your skills to at least 6 of the teams. And one of the teams was there, not only got to interview you, but got to see you live, got to review your tape, and it's a good thing. I think the showcase is moving on. And Tinashe, thank you so much for coming on, man, and congratulations.
So I missed that last part. It broke up a little bit.
It's okay. I was just saying congratulations. I was so glad that you got to meet you over at the rugby showcase. You got to showcase your skills in front of the team that eventually picked you. I think it proves that this is the way going forward for the MLR, to have these combines, to have these interviews, and then this is how the draft is going to go from now on.
And I totally agree. I think I mentioned it in my interview when I was at the showcase that it's a great opportunity to get out there to show your skills live. It's one thing to see it on film, it's another thing to see it in person. And it's also a good opportunity for the guys who feel like they don't have the film, the quality of film, to get out there, show their personalities to the coaches and the people involved. And I really enjoyed it. I think it should be something big next year. I'm willing myself to hop out and be there as well.
Awesome. We'll hook you back up with Mikey Brown. Maybe we can get you a paying gig through High Performance Management Group. Tinashe, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll get you on the Rugby Rant right before the season. We love to interview our players, man. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Tinashe. It's great to see another LU product get their opportunity, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers,
Appreciate
mate.
it.
Hold on, mate.
So real quick, we got some picks. So we have AGs coming in with the 20 pick of the draft. Asa Carter out of Arkansas State. Lock again. I'm going to say it again for the 50,000th time. Can't coach height. Then the next pick is the 21st pick for the Free Jacks. And Anthony Adamczyk from Penn State, another Penn State product going in the draft. Tight head prop again. You know what you're getting with sometimes with these props at a Newtown, right by where the big guy lives. NOLA coming in with the 22nd pick, and let's see where NOLA Gold goes. although we know JD already knows what's happening here. Christian Alvarez, Penn State. I wonder why he kind of winked a little bit at the last pick when I said a Penn State product, and a scrum half. Hometown California, but again, out of that Penn State program. JD, give us some little tidbits here. What can you tell us?
Yeah, again, look, you're looking at pedigree, and I think that the environments in which these players are coming from do play, a bit of a factor in terms of the consideration. I think that, Fitzy's logic here with especially the picks is kind of twofold, right? Is always around who's the best players available for us, and then the other piece is, do they actually address a need? And I think that if you look at the depth in which NOLA had to kind of search down for players, it was awesome to see players kind of step up and do. Player attrition is real. 16 games will do that. So you're seeing a bit of a variety here in some selections, and again, defaulting to good pedigree programs, like Coach Hunley has put together there, and using Penn State as an example. It's pretty easy to kind of default to there. So expect to see that, especially in these later rounds. I believe that teams will do that, unless there's a physical kind of physical athlete, if you would, potentially from a smaller program.
Now, he's a tight head prop. I mean, they always say that, loose heads are a little easier to develop going into a higher level game, just a little easier. And I never played prop, so I can't speak firsthand to that, but it's a little easier to adjust a loose head than it is a tight head. JD, what is the difference between, for those who don't know, between playing loose and tight head?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, if you asked me that 5 years ago, it'd be a different, story to how it is now. I think that the way in which the scrum is actually being refereed is changing the body types, if you would. In terms of a tight head prop, I mean, let's think about the tight head props of 10 years ago. Some of them would be, out of puff after, 10 minutes of the kind of the current game. So I think you're starting to see the gap close a little bit in terms of the loose head and tight head, but they are very, very specific. And obviously, tight head, the bigger preference there is their overall scrummaging ability, and what else they can bring, generally speaking, a more of a potentially physical, might be a defensive player. And then your loose head is, again, scrummaging ability, but can ball carry and give a bit more of, look at a Gus McClellan type player.
So we're sorry to cut you off. We're coming up on the next picks. Dallas Jackals, 23rd pick in the draft. And they got it through a trade from Rooney. I believe it was for cap consideration. Alejandro Torres, Thomas More University, fly half, Argentinian. Look at that.
What I tell you guys, I knew this guy was I don't know if a hidden gem, but certainly a gem. I think he's a guy that will easily develop into a quality MLR back. It may not be immediate, but what I noticed, to me, when I watched the game film, I immediately started watching and I saw like, wow, he's a difference maker. He knows how to put people into space. Some of the game films showed the complexity of the lines that they were running and the complexity of the.
Hey Rob, let me cut you off because I'm doing them in threes here, and I want to get him out here. So just give me a second. And then you can go right back to your love affair with Alejandro Torres. Utah picking the 24th pick in the draft. And fans were on TRN now, so international fans should have coverage. Connor Burns, Lindenwood, fullback. I got to speak to another guy. I believe he's an English guy out of Reading when I was talking to him. But, great pick. We'll talk about him real quick in a little bit. Rugby ATL with the 25th pick selecting Colson Warner. I mean, Lindenwood going, first two rounds, fly half out of Lindenwood. I know Rob's, is loving it. So go back to your Alejandro Torres talk.
Well, yeah, what I was saying is I really think like he ran the back line with some complexity. There were a lot of different lines being run. There was a lot of timing plays. And what I noticed, and this is the difference for me, was when he conducted those, they were conducted to perfection, and it showed because he was putting guys into space successfully. So that's what I noticed immediately, and I think that's an entirely transferable skill when he gets to the MLR with the right coaching, with the right group of players beside him, and with the right toolage of a guy in front of him at the fly-up position or even a 12. I think he can easily adjust to the game. So it's good to see him, and I think people will be impressed for those who don't know him.
And I wonder, he wasn't looked at in SLAR. I'm kind of surprised. You would think that some of these Argentinians and these international players, especially from South America, would be, big hits down there in SLAR. But I wonder if COVID, I know COVID had competition issues down in COVID. So maybe some of these internationals are now looking up to say, okay, what's the next best thing? MLR had 99-0, George Killebrew said, right? So we essentially beat COVID in 2021. So hopefully we could do that in 2022. So I wonder if that's in the mindset of some of these internationals, and maybe you'll see some free agent signings. Not just young guys, but some of these older guys who didn't have the competition that they thought they were going to have in SLAR. But that's just me talking about BS. And so we're coming with picks 26, 27, and 28. And then I think we're going to go and go back to some of our MLR draft interviews. So Giltinis. James O'Neill, University of Victoria. Look at that. Our first Canadian selected by an American team. We were just talking about that. So we got 2 full rounds of the draft gone, fellas. And real quick, we're going to take a little break, and we're going to see what Andrew Guerra and Bronson Tellis have to say about their experiences with the draft last year. We'll be right back.
What I would do over differently from last year's draft, I would probably get affiliated with an agent or just get an agency. Last year I was lucky enough to have my university coach, Sean Duffy. He was a great help for me. He spoke to a lot of head coaches he had personal relationships with. He helped me out with my film immensely. He did amazing things. He definitely helped me, and put a great foot in the door for me. But in today's day and age, there's a couple of agencies already, established in the rugby community. One that is D2S, that's the one I'm affiliated with. And they're just really good at, that kind of stuff. I mean, if you need to get somewhere, like get your foot in the door, the guys in the agency just know, all the head coaches, they know the management staff, that's one benefit. And there's also a couple benefits, helping with endorsements, all that kind of stuff. So I think, gearing up for the draft, getting kind of, in that mindset, they'll definitely know the right people to speak to, that can help you out with that. So I think if I had to do something differently, I would have definitely tried to sign with D2S, earlier.
So we're back, and I think JD has a little bit to talk about with James O'Neill being signed to LA.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So, I think he's born in the UK. Obviously, is a Canadian citizen now, but another UVic guy. I think, look, it's definitely a break in the mold, if you would, that we thought, or definitely I thought that we would be, kind of exclusively seeing American players, being drafted by American sides. So, fair play to the Giltinis for actually taking an opportunity on a Canadian player. I think just, looking at, his video and again, looking at positionally what he does bring to the table. So as an open side, and he has actual genuine fetching or poaching abilities, and doubles as a hooker. I think that, again, we're starting to see late rounds. We're starting to see players that can bring flexibility or versatility. And, I think that definitely, if you look at Guerra as an example, that was kind of tabbed as a hooker. We're going very physical in the back row, and especially the league in which we're playing in. So, I'm not surprised by him actually being selected, but it was a bit of a shock that LA made the selection. So again, fair play to them for it.
And shout out to our buddy Ty, who's stuck. He's going to Rugby Town Sevens. He's the PA announcer at Rugby Town. So if you're going to Rugby Town Sevens, go say hi to Ty for us this weekend. Unfortunately, he's grounded. Couldn't be with us. We miss you too, Ty. So speaking of the later rounds, let's get with the first pick of the third round, Dallas Jackals. selecting 27th pick. Calvin Gentry, University of Memphis, outside center. This is a big pickup. I like it.
Sevens team.
Say it again, JD.
Mm-hmm.
I said they're going to have a hell of a sevens team. I tell you what, man. I mean, that's a pretty dynamic. You know, you look at Naposki, you know, Calvin Gentry now too. I mean, there's some really quality, and exciting outside backs. I mean, again, we talk about indications around styles of play or patterns of play. Definitely, it's safe to say that this is a team that's not looking to potentially look for a lot of contact, play to space early, and use their speed and try and really play a genuine 15-man rugby. That hopefully is pretty exciting for the Dallas Jackal fans. But again, I think it's an exciting pick, young Calvin, another guy that fortunate enough to coach at the U19s.
Yep, and we have Houston SaberCats selecting Dylan Shotwell, hooker out of Sam Houston State, local boy, Kingwood, Texas. I think unfortunately that knocks our boy Mikey Brown out of the running for playing for Houston. If they're drafting somebody, you hate to see it, but as we've seen now, we have so many showcase guys being picked in the draft. Maybe Mikey is better off doing running combines throughout the world. I just like busting his chops a little bit. But what do you think about a hooker grabbing a spine position in this late stage in the game?
So Dylan actually was at the same camp that Calvin Gentry and played in the U19s for the US. So another guy that I've kind of tracked and at Sam Houston State. Not necessarily as well known as some of the name schools, but Dylan is a very good 80-minute kind of player and hard grafting hooker that's quite accurate too with his throws. So I'm hopeful for him making a step up, and I think he's definitely a late round gem.
And Ethan Scott going in the 29th pick to Seattle, scrum half. Seattle seems to be rebuilding. Again, I think another team that had top-down issues this season. It showed on the field. I mean, let's be honest, the AGs were in this position, in 2019 and 2020, and they dug themselves out of that hole. And I see Houston and I see Seattle taking these steps, righting the ship. And I think drafting guys like a young scrum half out of University of Memphis, Ethan Scott, isn't the type of guy you could take a chance on. Obviously, you can go do, beyond there. This is the guy I feel he's on the club. He's like a Connor Buckley style where he might not be getting the start, but he'll definitely be getting some playing times, especially in blowouts, especially in games and matches where maybe you're playing the matchup on the Eastern Western Conference, depending on the points. We've seen that happen before. So I think this is a good pick for Seattle, and I think Seattle's had a solid draft, and we're going to see what they do in free agency to shore some of their players up on the field.
Hey, JD, and I want to go back and retread for a moment. And I'm going to use a little trick here. I'm going to go to the run, pass, or kick variety because I don't want to put you or paint you into a corner, but I think there's some value to be had here. You talked a little bit about Dallas having a great sevens team. Is there some subtlety in what you're trying to say? Should people read between the lines here about what kind of team they have planned?
No, absolutely not. I think just. Again, that's the sevens coach in me as well. That's looking, saying, actually knowing these kids that they would be a handy bit of jest. But I alluded to it before, though. The indications in which players that you select definitely indicate the way in which you see the game, or you definitely want to play the game. And look, there's, as you can see with the Giltinis versus Rugby ATL, it can be played a lot of different ways to be successful. Again, I just see a very, free and open kind of style of play that's going to be, a lot of continuity and a lot of possession-based rugby that, is exciting to watch.
To jump in there, we have seen sevens guys be successful in the MLR, but we have also seen sevens guys, not really gain traction. I don't want to throw guys' names out there, but I have a few guys in mind. Rob knows the number one person I'm talking about, just because we talk about him so often. But I feel like it's hit or miss, and I think some guys can deal with the physicality. some guys can't, and I think that's where you kind of have that line where you see the success. If somebody's going to, it's hard to say Paul Mullins in the open field, he's not looking to pass the ball. And not only do I have to hit him, I have to make sure I take him down. And some guys just don't have that sand because in the sevens game, and they're used to that, and it just never transferred that way. Real quick, I'm going through the next couple picks. We have NOLA at the 30th pick. Carmen Consolino, fly half at an AIC. Love AIC. I'm a big, obviously Northeastern Nerfview guy. So we never played them because they were 4 divisions higher than UMass Dartmouth. But I love seeing these guys go. 22. He's a mature kid. We're not talking about an 18-year-old scrum half here. So I think it's a good pick. It's another one where you can say, hey, he can be on the squad. And again, he might not start, but he'll gain some traction. What was that?
I was going to say, so I suppose I don't want to put JD in a bad position, but for fans out there that are paying attention, NOLA's picked two scrum halves, right? And we know that NOLA has 2 quality scrum halves already. So just as a NOLA guy, I'm wondering, it makes me think about, well, what do they have in mind? Do they have in mind, as Fitzy talked about, having that versatility? They see one of these guys or both these guys in different positions on the field, displaying their their versatility, or do we see, a little bit of forward thinking about what that roster may look like in the 2022 season? And it looks like we have another LU product joining us. Imagine that. Congratulations, Kel. On being selected in the MLR draft in 2021. How does it feel?
Thank you so much. It feels amazing. I mean, it's a dream come true. It's been something that I wanted to be a professional rugby player since I was about 4 years old. And this is the step in the right direction. And I couldn't be more excited. I'm over the moon. It's amazing. Absolutely.
And the Free Jacks selected you. And so, I'm going to ask you the same question I put out there. What kind of, in your mind, as you think and reflect on your game, and we know Coach Macy emphasizes, doing a lot of analysis, looking at your game, looking at a lot of game film. What do you expect to bring to the Free Jacks when you step on the pitch, during that first day of camp?
I think
we lost you there for a moment, Kel.
And come back on.
There you go. We're good now. Go ahead.
Hi. Sorry. The Free Jacks are actually calling me right now. Is it all right if I pick up this phone call?
Yeah, go. We'll come back. Yeah.
Right, perfect. Thank you. See you in a bit.
Love that these guys are getting the call real quick. Dominic Iocavino going to San Diego. Fullback. I know he has a big boot, but I also know that Dominic likes, I was talking to, who the hell was I talking to? I forgot I was talking to, and they were talking about Dominic and his penchant for coming and counterattacking because he likes to hit guys in the open field, a la Mikey Teo, a la Ben Foden this year, who turned it on and started doing that. So it's nice to see big bruisers, and then Old Glory coming in with the 32nd pick in the collegiate draft with, hold on one second, it's going Lebby Koilarbi from Penn State, another outside center. All these outside centers are going. People are taking flyers now. Again, another good guy from the Penn State program. Can't beat that.
Hey, and JD, talk about Kobe. You brought his name up when we talked a little bit a couple days ago. Where does the team see his value as a player?
Yeah, I think, guys, I'm going to go back to it again, right? And I hate to beat a drum here, but look, I think that, especially the later round picks, I mean, I think we're picking on, potential, and the other piece of it is that, again, that versatility. So, can we bring in a square peg and make it round, or, turn it into a triangle? So really it's essentially affording them the opportunity to get into the building, and then really finding, to the selection, of Carmen before is where do we actually fit in? And I think that, we've tried to go away from potentially just thinking that a guy coming in must play position X.
Because the reality is, in the if we look at the high school game, normally your best player is playing fly half. That can run and carry fly half or number 8, right? So then we're not developing potentially genuine, game managing fly halves at say high school level. So, I think that with these late round selections, that's what you're seeing is guys that look, let's come in, let's see where they fit. I think that's the difference between those kind of definitive first round selections is this is how we see this player, this is how we want to utilize this player. Whereas those late round ones is, look, this is where we believe they can add value. Let's see what they could do with the opportunity, inside back, outside back, and see where it goes.
And we have another drafted player here.
And we got Colson Warner, again, an LU product. I've teared up about 3 or 4 times at least up to this point because everybody who follows the Rugby Rant knows I love my LU boys. Congratulations, Colson. How you feeling right now? Walk us through the emotions as you heard your name being read.
I'll say I was super excited, a little nervous. Honestly, I had a little bit of a game of adrenaline just going through my nervous system there. And as soon as my name got called, it was a big relief to hear that someone was giving me a shot, and looking forward to being in the league.
That's awesome. So, I'm asking some of the same questions of the fellows as they come on. I posted to Kale a little bit. We hope to bring him on as well. What do you talk a little bit? What do you expect to bring to the team when you step on that pitch for the first time and start preseason training?
I expect to bring some heart and tenacity to the team. I am a little bit younger than some of the other players on the team, but that's not going to stop me from bringing some intensity to the practices and making sure that everybody's going to fight for that spot. And if I get the spot, then fight to keep it.
Awesome. And that's the mentality you got to have, right? You got to want it worse than everybody else, and you got to keep working and driving. I'm going to ask this question to both of you guys because obviously you're both LU products. LU had a great 7 season. Obviously, they have a history of great 7s. They have a history of great 15s. Talk about one thing that you will bring from your LU experience and carry over into your experience and you plying your trade as a player in the MLR. I'm going to go to Kale and then I'll go to Colson on that question.
The one thing I'm going to bring from LU, I think we had such a professional setup at LU, and the boys all hold each other like very much accountable for like stuff. We have such a good team environment there, and if anything, I would like to kind of like bring what I've learned here from LU about being like a good teammate, and that it's all about the team and everything into the Free Jacks. And yeah, I think that would be what I would take. Yeah.
Colson, now, unfortunately, Kale picked one that you might have picked, so you got to go.
Exactly. Thanks for that, Kale.
Yeah. Congratulations, by the way, Colson.
Yeah, you as well, buddy. But yeah, I would bring. I would kind of piggyback off of that, just accountability and just being there as a team and working hard. I know Atlanta works really hard, and they came out second to, on top there, and they have a pretty good program over there to begin with. But it's something that has always stuck with me going from team to team is making sure that there's people there that actually care about the game and the team, and that they actually want to be there.
What's interesting as you talk about the Free Jacks, as you talk about Atlanta, that for me there's a common thread, and I know JD is pretty sensitive to this because in my talks with JD, he considers himself an American coach, even though he hails by birth from Australia. But the two threads there are, a CEO of the Free Jacks, of course, Alex Magleby, and of course, a CEO and head coach down there in Atlanta, and Scott Lawrence. How excited are both you guys to be plying your trade and really contributing to the growth of American rugby here in the United States? And I'll go Colson and I'll give Kale the second answer here.
I'm actually really excited. Being from Pocatello, Idaho, the rugby scene down there is not huge, and it's really excited to be one of the first ones to make it out of there and make it to the professional level, or even to the collegiate level. That it's bringing something to kids back there that's saying, hey, you can do it now. It's possible. It's a sport that's growing, especially in America. It's a very big sport. And so it's just another thing that can promote rugby and say even the small towns can have people come out.
And that's awesome. You're really talking about the pathway. Kel, how about yourself? Talk a little bit about, this idea of, really being part of the growth of rugby in America.
Oh, for sure. I'm honored to be a part of the growth of rugby in America. Even from coming in to Lindenwood last year, I've only had 2 years at Lindenwood, and last year being the first year of the draft and stuff like that. It's just such an honor to be part of the second ever MLR draft and the second ever draft in the whole of rugby. I think that draft and the way that the MLR have done it with the draft is slightly different to how most other professional rugby leagues run. But when you take it back to the growth of rugby in USA, I think it helps massively because it attracts the attention that NFL and the MLB and the NBA all get with their drafts and stuff like that. And I think it's amazing. I'm honored to have been a part of it, and can't wait to see the game grow even more out here.
Well, I want to personally, and the Rugby Rant wants to thank you both for joining us tonight. It's a tremendous honor. It just, makes me well up inside to know that we've got two Americans that are going to continue to apply their trade. And Kale, you hail from Hawaii. Colson, I think you're from Idaho, right? So we do have some American boys that are going to continue to grow this sport, provide that shining light or example of a pathway for the next generation of youth to come along. I want to thank you guys for joining us. We want to wish you good luck in that next phase. And I want to extend an invitation. Sometime I'll be hitting you guys up just to see how your development's going and how your experiences are going at your respective teams. Thank you so much for joining me. Good luck, gentlemen, and celebrate with your family in style.
Thank you for having me.
Well done, thank you, guys.
And I'm back, TV Magic people. So let's real quick recap. The live draft coverage is now over. Let me recap real quick the last couple picks. So AGs with the 33rd selection pick, Brandon Asbel, Davenport hooker, again, another showcase guy. Zachary Bastris selected by the Free Jacks, University of Northern Colorado, a center. Samuel Mace, University of Ottawa hooker, going to Toronto. Peter Reyes, Kutztown prop, University prop, going to Rooney. Congrats to the newest Rooster. Emerson Pryor, Trent University prop, going to Utah. Sean Atkins, Western Michigan University center, going to ATL. And the last pick of the draft, Gerald Lowe, Kutztown flanker, going to the Giltinis. Man, it's crazy. This the draft craziness, everybody. Draft craziness.
I want to bring in JD here real quick because we've seen two boys picked up from, of course, Joey, and then who was the last name you mentioned there? If it came from Western Michigan.
Hold on. Give me a second.
Sean Atkins.
Sean Atkins. Thank you, JD. When we think about, powerhouse programs, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but Western Michigan, isn't the first to roll off your tongue, right? LU, Life, St. Mary's, Cal. These are the teams that you think of, perhaps even in Central Washington. But here we have two players in this draft coming out of Western Michigan. I can't help but thinking, JD, and you were down there, I got to imagine, at the Sevens National Championship. How much did that event help elevate the visibility of these two guys that were drafted from Western Michigan, an up-and-coming program?
Yeah, it's a question I kind of wish I'd asked But it was again, we talk about opportunities for players and what opportunities did some of these guys felt maximized or would definitely pique the interest of these MLR programs in them. Anecdotally speaking, the CRCs this year actually did provide that. Again, limited opportunities this year to see players. I know Joey Backey was one that really come out of left field after a strong performance playing for West Michigan there. But I mean, look, it's a credit to what Doc Allen's done, with the program, and it shows you that these state schools, that with a little bit of alumni funding and getting the right kids, can have a lot of success and don't need to be a varsity program to be successful. So, it's pretty awesome to see.
I just want to speak to some of the trade details. I think we talked about it early on. Rooney getting that 6th pick from OGs, and that was DeMonte Noble going to OGs, Rooney getting the 6th pick. And then with the other trades, Dallas getting New York's 10 and 23rd spot, which was for an international spot. Let's see. It's an international spot, and Dallas, New York sent some money, some cap room to Dallas. Utah and NOLA swapping for 9s and 11s. Utah gave some cap space to NOLA for that pushback. Toronto swap getting 35 and NOLA coming up. Toronto got some cap space from NOLA. I'm not including amounts. I don't think that's right, but cap space and foreign player spots are tradable assets. People get used to it. So many people were complaining about the Giltinis and the ATL lineups. And complain about it at the beginning of the season and tell the commissioner you don't want those things to be tradable assets, which I find asinine, but don't complain about it at the end of the season in the championship when everybody's been going by the same set of rules, in my opinion. But just want to give you guys some details on those trades now that the draft is over. We can kind of open up. They were embargoed a little bit by the MLR. They wanted you guys to have a great draft experience and didn't want the big guy in the hammer to ruin it. So Hammer and JD, if you can wrap up a little bit, give us a little recap.
I'll dovetail off JD. He's the resident expert. That's why we brought him in.
I think overall, the ones that have stood out, and I think we talk about opportunities, and for anyone watching, aspiring players, look, I think it's evident that the GMs and the coaches around the league have looked at the limited opportunities and have made decisions based off a little bit of homework and a lot of homework, but limited experiences and limited, actual face time with these kids. So, I guess, wrapping up and just thinking about, obviously, the next people kind of coming through is, Joey touched on it in his comment to us, is make the most of those opportunities, and any of those opportunities to be in front of people. If you can start to collate that footage, look, it's going to, in turn, end up hopefully with you being drafted. And that was something that kind of really resonated with me tonight with some of the players. If you'd told me, before the showcase who these guys were going to be drafted, I probably wouldn't know them. So I think that's been something that's been really critical. Again, using the Jackals, I think it's safe to say how we think, and don't hold me to the fire on it, but how some teams are seemingly either reloading or potentially seeing the game being played in 2022. And that's exciting to see for some of these teams. And then I think, lastly, it's great to see, though, you'd love to see these 3rd round guys, breaking through and potentially getting some first 15 minutes, at the MLR or getting their caps next year, for me. And I think that, through all the rounds, there is quality there that could actually do that. So, really exciting and pretty cool to be a part of. So thanks for having me on too, fellas. It's been good.
I mean, we appreciate it. I mean, any guy who's willing to come on and talk about, their picks and talk about their mindset and just in general talk about, the way you feel the rugby plans going in North America. It's so nice to have a guy like you on. So thank you so much for coming on, JD.
Yeah. And before we wrap it up, I just want to throw out a couple thoughts for fans. Number one, I want to remind everybody who's still watching or who might catch this, Monday night, our Run, Pass, or Kick is going to feature NOLA Gold GM Ryan Fitzgerald. We've had him on before. Obviously, I have a strong connection, but we're going to really focus on, NOLA moved around a lot in the draft, right? They did a lot of swapping of positions. They traded they traded some assets to get themselves up in the draft. And so we're going to go through the mindset and perhaps get some more insights. And I got to say, JD has offered some quality insights tonight that's really enhanced our program. And I can't thank him enough for his willingness to do that, taking time out of his personal life, because I know his time is valuable. For those out there who watched, a couple of my takeaways. Number one, look, swapping of picks is going to be the future of the MLR draft. It's just going to be. And as JD spoke to it, what I love about that, and what I think that other people should just start to embrace, is the fact that have fun with what it tells you about the philosophy that teams will take into the following season, right? I mean, it gives you, if we look back at LA, right, and what they did, they traded and swapped some picks and got involved there. And you could really see where they were going to go in terms of building a newly minted roster that at the end of the day won them the championship. And I think that's the fun part. So folks, we just have to embrace it. Don't fight it. It's going to be in the name of the game. And I call it bumping and rubbing, taking it from NASCAR, because that's what it's really all about. But I love the philosophy there. And finally, guys, folks that are watching, have fun. Make note of these guys at the end of the day and take stock in who really gets an opportunity to show their wares next season. But don't forget about the class of 2020, right? How many of these guys will begin to start to get themselves onto a roster and make a name for themselves to add on with the likes of Guerra and Mooneyham and Cook and others like them, Aaron Matthews out in Seattle, what they've already done, because I think you're going to see more and more of those guys step into the limelight and make a name for themselves and develop. They're only sophomores, so we can expect to see some of those guys step in.
And, I just want to shout out some of the people who've helped us with this draft. Obviously, JD Stephenson, number one, for coming on and taking 2.5 hours of his valuable time to come on here and talk with us. I want to give a shout out to Doug.
His wife, too, by the way.
and JD's lovely wife. I want to give a shout out to Doug Coyle. Check out DJ Coyle Rugby. He posts his articles in the Fan Zone. We love Doug. He spits facts. Guys like Doug are what's keeping the MLR alive in print media, and that's what we need. Brian Ray, American Rugby News, same thing. Those guys do great articles. They break down great things, so I just want to give them shout-outs. And give shout-outs to all those secret people, Rob, right? Those sources we have that gave us little insight things, those people we're not going to name, even though one of them's coming on Monday for the RPK.
Yeah. They're like Voldemort, man. They shall not be named, but we're gonna thank them. Real quick, before we go away, folks, if you haven't noticed, the insights that JD has given gives you an idea of just the quality of rugby mind that's out there. We hope someday, JD, that you find your way into the MLR mix. We know you've been at the USA level, but hopefully you find yourself, into a coaching role at some point in time. It would be lovely to see you there, because I know you have the mind for it. And you certainly have the skill set.
Thanks, Hammer. I appreciate that.
Hammer loves his NOLA guys. There's nothing that's going to get in the way of Hammer. Just totally telling the NOLA guys how he feels, that he loves you. He'll probably
help you and NOLA. So that's
right. And people can be at home with the little bit I talk about Rooney.
Right. And I'm always, and as a result, I'm always looking to, get a little free swag back. But, that's a story for another day.
He's got it in the mail, mate. It's in the mail.
Yeah, right.
And Rugby Rant fans, thank you so much for following us for the past almost 2.5 hours. We know these live draft shows go long, but we want to bring you some insight. We want to bring you some thoughts from not only guys like JD, but some of the players who were just drafted and have that exciting feeling and got to meet the commissioner and give him a hug. And we got through 3 rounds this season. It was great. I hope to expand to 4 rounds next season. And who knows, maybe we'll have, 48 or whatever, however many teams we're going to have. Maybe Glendale comes back. Maybe we have a new Midwest team. Who friggin' knows? But that's the excitement that the MLR brings. I'm Scott, the big guy Farrar. That's Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. For our friend Ty, our co-host who couldn't be here because he's going to Rugby Town Sevens. Say hello to him if you see him. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, JD Stephenson, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Rugby Rant fans,